or do I need to be closer?
Oh no, I would say move closer so we can see your face, but if you can, but if you can't, then
Let me see. Oh, all this technology.
yep, there you go. Now you look more distinguished. You look like Black Thought.
I can't rap though.
He said, I can't rap. Not yet. There's still time.
Mm-hmm.
You look like the Roots. Live on YouTube, huh?
That's our other staff.
We're rolling. It was taking a really long time for it to come up. And so he's like, where is it? Where is it? And I'm just like,
yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to mute myself and turn my camera off so the focus can be on you all.
We got to bring Tori up, right?
Oh yeah, where's Tori? Tori, where'd you go?
We need you, T. Russell. T. Russell in the building.
Well,
I'll text him real quickly.
Okay.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this incredible film as much as I did. I'm really excited to be here tonight with three amazing panelists for a little post-film discussion. And since we only have about 30 minutes on the clock, I'm not going to spend a ton of time of introductions because I'm sure you'd much rather hear from them than hear from me. But I will give a super quick introduction. So first off, pleased to welcome our amazing filmmaker, Mobolaji Olambiwanu, who is an award-winning director with a background in producing, directing, camera work, education, conflict resolution, economic development, and campaign organizing. And I'm sure we'll get to hear a little bit more about how his background has influenced his work here tonight. Second, we have Reverend Sekou with us, who's an activist, theologian, author, a documentary filmmaker in his own right, and a musician who traveled to Ferguson and did much work in the streets alongside local and national groups in the days and weeks following Michael Brown Jr.'s death, and is obviously featured in the film, as you just saw. And Tori Russell should be making his way back to us just shortly. He stepped away for just a moment, but Tori was a lead organizer in the Ferguson uprising and a former founding member of the Black Lives Matter policy and strategy team. And so we're really excited to welcome him as well. So while we wait for Tori to make it back on camera here, we are going to start with a question for Mobolaji. And if you have questions for this incredible panel, please do feel free to put them in the chat and we will make sure to get to as many of those as possible. But like I said, let's start with a question for Mobolaji. So this film is such a powerful portrayal of a spark that really ignited the global Black Lives Matter movement. When those end credits are rolling, how did you hope that viewers would be feeling?
I hope that viewers would feel that, one, connected to the family, connected to the tragedy that was experienced by the community and in particular by the Brown family. But also I hope that viewers would be connected with the resilience that was offered, also the pathway of resilience that Michael Brown Sr. has demonstrated in the film. I hope that's also something that people are left with, that yes, in the midst of tragedy, you can still find hope. You can still find resilience through community, through organizing, through giving back. I want to make sure that people were left with that sense, like, yes, there's tragedy and unfortunately too much of it, but there's also the opportunity to find community, to find resilience, to find strength in organizing and through taking action really around what matters to you. And so I wanted to leave people with that thought and that feeling that that all is not lost. And we can see certainly from the global response to the murders of Michael Brown, and even more so the murder of George Floyd, that we can see that the community, the global community is standing with us. I wanted to also leave people with a sense that they're not alone, that there are other people who, you know, we feel the tragedy, we feel the pain, but there are a lot of people around the globe who are standing on the right side of history and who are standing with us if we take the time to look.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Reverend Sekou, you know, as Mobolaji mentioned, you know, this film really does have a focus and a lens really tightly in on Michael Brown Sr., looking at his pain and his resilience. I think one of the things that the film really brought up for me was this, you know, the unbearable pain that one experiences losing a child to state violence, and also the just really heavy and heartbreaking fear of losing a child to state violence, which is something that many Black families in this country know all too well, and most white families will never really experience. So, you know, I know that you've spent a lot of time in the street working with families, working with community members in the aftermath of various tragedies. Do you have any insight in how we can really work to build that level of empathy, understanding, and outrage in white communities where that fear is really so foreign because it's not part of their daily lived experience?
I mean, well, actually, it's quite a tall order, given the white supremacist society in which we live in, and the way in which particularly white middle class life is the predominant projection of what the good life is in America, which is something that is typically described as something suburban, well-heeled, and white. And so I think that it becomes a deep contradiction. One of the bright moments, because we want to keep track of the pain, I think, I just want to say, publicly to Brother Mo, the brilliance of the film is its capacity to invoke the deep level of grief that these families in this community is experiencing. That is unique filmmaking feat. There are ways in which empathy can be elicited, compassion made known, but there is what you capture is the guttural cry of not only a father and a mother, but of a people. And so to me, that is the brilliance of the film. In terms of what it takes to bring communities together is that I think the great Ruby Sales said this recently while preaching about a year ago while preaching at my church, Valley and Mountain here in Seattle, that white supremacy and white privilege are actually, the white supremacy is soul murder to white people. That it actually destroys their souls. And that they have, that at bare minimum, they have some cosmic and spiritual degradation that is at stake for them that they need to transcend. And so it's not just simply about white folks feeling Black empathy, but Black empathy for Black people. But the deeper question is, what are the ways in which they come to see that their son was laying in the street for 4.5 hours, sweltering in the heat, right? That their son on the cover of the New York Times says he was no angel, right? Well, their son was called the demon by his murder, right? And that in that there's the possibility of their own salvation, that they might become freer, they might become better human beings, right? Because the issue is that we don't want to get lost in a kind of liberal formulation in which we're only concerned with these kinds of equity, like emotional equity. Well, what we want ultimately is a just world. And because we want a just world, we want white folks to be able to feel in such a way that it is theirs. And because it is theirs, that they're willing to make the kind of sacrifices necessary to make a better place. And the gift of Ferguson, it was that. It was a multiracial, it was Black-led, multiracial resistance movement that was not only youth, but it's elders, it's white folk, right? There's primarily anti-Zionist Jews who are carrying the infrastructure of Ferguson. It's Palestinians tweeting us from around the world, right? and everyday white folks, particularly on that south side of St. Louis, right, where there's more of a liberal enclave, that all of those folks were willing to risk life and limb. And so that's the untold story. And the last thing, and I'll shut up, is that there is no Black Lives Matters without Ferguson. If Black Lives Matters is the word, Ferguson is the word made flesh. On the night the murder of Michael Brown, Darren Wilson was not indicted. The term Black Lives Matters was tweeted more than 1 million times. Right? That is only in Ferguson. Ferguson gives birth to the Black Lives Matters movement. And I just want to make sure we name and we keep track of that. I'm not saying Ferguson came up with the term, but I'm saying Ferguson enlivens it, it enfleshes it. It makes the possibility, even for the resistance movement that we see in this particular moment in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that really takes us perfectly into my next question, which Tori, I'll give the floor to you to kick us off on, but I would welcome thoughts from any of you. The final moments of the film highlight some significant wins of the Black Lives Matter movement over the last 7 years, both locally, but also nationally, even internationally. There's some great footage. Do you feel like the momentum that was born out of Ferguson still exists today? And if so, what changes do you believe are on the horizon for us, both locally and nationally?
I think about it. I'm pretty sure I think about it differently than most. I don't see those wins as being Black Lives Matter wins. I feel like those things are wins that were interrupted by Black Lives Matter. To me, they're not fulfilled wins, right? So it's cool to be able to address the president, and I guess that is a win. But I'm raised in the radical Black tradition that you claim no easy wins, and so you would need substance to actually have the president or whoever's running, Democrat or Republican, to take your platform and add it to their platform as they win. I feel like now we talk about symbolism as a win, painting Black Lives Matter on the street where Black people are still going to be harassed. Kids are still going to be pushed into the school to prison pipeline, and prison's going to be filled up by the Black mayors and even white mayors and so-called liberal mayors. Is not a win for us. And so to some it's a win, but to people who are in Ferguson or in Baltimore and other places who are in the grassroots, who are doing the everyday brunt work, who probably like me don't identify as Black Lives Matter. And I know that's kind of, something, because everything Black that walk outside or protest is not Black Lives Matter. Just like everything back in the 60s and the 70s is not the civil rights movement. You have to have that nuance and understanding. And so some people are fighting for inclusion and diversity training and all of that. And some people fighting for freedom, justice, and equity. So
I would like to say, Mallory, that Tori went to the wrong high school. He went to Sumner. And so I went to Soldan, so his analysis might be a bit skewed.
Okay.
What do you think about it, Rev Seiko?
Well, I just think that Soldan is a superior high school than Sumner. That's what I think.
If you don't like state championships, then you probably should go to Soldan. But over here, we got state championships. I'm leave it at that in every sport. But
one is just such a good Tori is my brother. So it's just a gift just to see to set eyes on him. We have tear gas and arrested and ate and laughed and partied together. And I think one of the things I always want to keep track of is that joy. That even in the midst of even some of the symbolic victories, I think in terms of hard political realities, I think Tori is right. I would want to push us to concede that, that as my grandmama say, never forget where you came from and the bridges that brought you over. That while these symbolic victories, right, we do get some breaking. That's something. So what has happened is that that the grassroots, everyday people who Marx would call the lumpen proletariat, set the stage for them to begin even to get the concessions. So the concessions are even hard fought, right? In the framework of I think this fragile multiracial democracy in which white men have never had to fight for their rights. That's unique in the history of countries. And so it's so crazy, right? Like voting doesn't change everything, but they don't even want you to do that. Right, you know what I'm saying? The civilization is so recalcitrant that it don't even want you to participate in a morally bankrupt system. Mm-hmm. And so the participation, the legal participation in constitutional rights is so contested in a white supremacist civilization that we even have to fight to get the concessions. And so I at least want to name that. And I think, as Tori said earlier, Cabral is right. We tell no lies and we claim no easy victories. The great Amilcar Cabral, revolutionary out of Guinea-Bissau, right? So I think he's right, but I do want to name how tough it is even to get the bourgeois concessions. Now, what we don't want is the bourgeois concessions. It also like we live in this weird moment that the stating of the obvious is a revolutionary notion. Black life matters. That's actually a pretty innocuous term. Right, it's pretty innocuous. It's less innocuous than even hope and change. It's just an innocuous term. But the mere fact that you state the obvious, and that is a revolutionary act, speaks to the level of the contrastedness of the nation. That's why Mo's film is so important. That it reminds us that these communities are people who weep, who lose children. Right, and so I think that emotional insight might help break open some broader conversations. But Sumner is always about 50%, right?
I know that all the SLPS folks in the house are probably going nuts in the chat over the. We love that. We love that.
Now, what high school you go to, Mallory?
Oh, come on, don't make me.
Yeah, no, you gotta answer. That's what it is.
I went to bougie white Narrington Webster. God, I had that all girls life.
Oh,
that Catholic.
You went to Narrington Hall?
Narrington Hall, sir.
Oh, you like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Y'all was fancy out there.
Real sadiddy.
Yeah, real sadiddy. The only closest we got to y'all was like the Rosati Cane.
Right.
I know.
I almost went to Rosati. I should, Rosati would have.
Oh, no, we'll have a whole nother conversation about what we used to call.
All right. Let's not get too off track. Let's.
Yeah. I do want to jump in. I want to jump in there and say that that yes, the victories are hard fought, right? Claim no easy victories. I mean, for sure, there's a lot of symbolism that's taken place globally and locally.
Yeah.
But for me, the victory is in the people.
Yeah.
Is in people like Tori Russell, whose life went in a whole different direction than it would have gone. The people like Reverend Sekou, whose life maybe has been altered by, and his work has been altered by this experience. The victory is in all the people's lives, I think, who've been altered by this experience. I mean, I think it would be great to see more concrete victories than that. But I think the thousands and thousands of people across the globe and across the country whose lives have been changed and they've been made more aware, I think it speaks to the possibility of a different future. Whether or not we've gotten there or not, it at least means there's a possibility now in a way that there wasn't, before this event happened. And so, and I think Reverend Sekou says it in the film. He says, we have to act as if we've already won, right? Because we have, right? That's why they bring out tanks and tear gas, right? Because they know it's inevitable, right? It's just we got to live in that inevitability. And I think that's, so for me, that's the victory. We're not seeing the concrete victories outside of the human lives that have been changed, but those human lives do count for something. Tori Russell does count. Reverend Sekou does count. All those other people whose lives have been changed, I think they count. And I've been supremely moved by meeting these folks on the streets of Ferguson, because they gave me hope in a way that I didn't have before I left. I was really, truly depressed before I started making this film, and in watching these people and watching these folks on the ground, it gave me a level of hope that I haven't experienced. I mean, it's not full elation or anything like that, but I do have a level of hope because I see what people are doing, and even I see what the church is doing. I didn't even expect that at all. The level of activity of the church, I was surprised, So I think it gave me a whole lot of hope, and as a result of many of the people that I saw involved on the ground in ways that I never expected. And before I went to Ferguson, I hadn't seen white people involved in these kind of movements. When I went to Ferguson, I actually saw white people. I was like, wow, white people are involved in these movements. They're out here protesting. That gave me a level of hope that I was surprised, because I didn't anticipate that was going to be the case either. Now it's commonplace, but back then in 2014, it didn't feel commonplace at all when I witnessed it. So I know we have to move on to the Q&A from the audience, but I just felt like I wanted to state that these gentlemen here and the women who are involved in the movement, the struggle, are huge victories for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I mean, I can say, to add to that, Mobolaji, I feel like in each of the sort of major protests that have followed, going from Ferguson in 2014 to the Jason Stockley protest in 2017 to the George Floyd protest in 2020, each one of them got bigger and bigger and more diverse. And I don't just mean racially diverse, I mean age diverse, I mean religion diverse, I mean background diverse, saw people coming from all over the place. So it does seem like each time there seems to be more and more people brought in under the tent here.
But if I could just say two things. One, I think, Mo, you're very right to point out, Ferguson is the first existential victory that we had. Right. So Trayvon raised some questions, right? Troy Davis raised some questions. The sit-in that the Dream Defenders raised some critical questions for us. But Ferguson was an existential victory in part because it lasted so long, right? It lasted longer than the Montgomery bus boycott. Somebody in the St. Louis region was in the street for well over a year. So we want to name that existential victory. Two, that other probably than Portland, has there been a consistent confrontation with the state over an extended period of time, right? So you got that kind of, when the feds came into Portland, you got white folks primarily in the street willing to confront the state and risk their life. But I'm saying we did it for over a year. No other uprising in the United States has done that in terms of a consistent confrontation with the state, right? And with a fraction of the resources that have come into movement spaces now, a fraction, right? And in fact, there was a meeting, I might be telling too much now, but there was a meeting in which the movement was offered $300 million to come out of the street, right? Tory knows it. Right, other folks know they offered us $300 million. Keep them. They went to the big nonprofits and said, keep them out the street. And the big nonprofits said, no, we're going to stay in the street. Right. And so part of that is that is the victory of a level of political in Ferguson. Whoever went, if you got arrested protest, we didn't care if you had warrants from before. We paying them warrants and we getting you out. Right. Right, that we perfected the notion of jail support here, right? We had one of the deepest communication infrastructures, right? Even with the infighting between the nationals and the locals, there still was a deep reason why you saw Tory on television, right after he'd been to jail, a working class black man on television, Damon, working class on the TV, Alexis, Brittany, working class people on the TV. Tell working class people on the TV. This is not the professional organizing class. These are not people with fancy nonprofit jobs. They're everyday people, right? What's the brother who did that rap for about mega rap for about 20 minutes? Dante. Low key, right? Chocolate, right? Lost voices. These are working class people. You don't like where everything we see now is primarily the managerial class. And so I want to just keep track of that. I know I'm talking too much, but I'm gonna shut up now.
All right, I think there's some questions there. There's 5 minutes left, I'm hearing, so I guess we better answer some questions from the audience.
Yeah, so I'm happy to go to an audience question. So one of our audience members says, thank you so much for this opportunity. We watched as a family and are very moved by what we saw and heard. My daughter asked, is that the whole story? In that spirit, are there plans to continue the story of Mike Brown's family and the community's progress in the years ahead?
Wow, I mean, I'd love to. I mean, this one was so hard to make and took every ounce of strength and every dollar in my pocket and everybody else's pocket around me that I hope there's another one. I just got to get some funding for it. I mean, that would certainly be, this one costs a lot of money. And so I don't even know if I have the strength to do it the way I did it before. It was so grassroots. So I would hope that people are willing to take up the mantle and support us in our next venture, so we don't have to do this again. I would love to do something with the fathers, the Black fathers that were impacted, and really go deep, because I think it's important that Black men and boys see that your manhood is not only defined by what is your external strength, but also by your internal strength, your emotional strength, your ability to deal with trauma head on and to speak to it and to deal with that pain, because I think so many of us suppress it. I think the lesson that these older men can show younger men, or even men of their same age, is that we don't have to hide it anymore. Michael Brown Sr. is a strong man, and he's made even stronger and more respectable by the fact that he's able to deal with his feelings and deal with the death of his son, which he should be able to deal with. In a society that accepts men and men as three-dimensional human beings, he should be able to grieve his son and not be considered less of a man for it. And that's what I think the society really needs to embrace, is that whole idea that manhood should not be limited by by the constraints that it's limited by at present. And I think that's what I would like to see and do more of in the future is liberate men from the chains of that, that sort of destructive mindset that says you can only be a man by being quiet, by not having any feelings and not having any emotions.
Yeah. Another question that we have from the audience is more quantitative in nature. I'm not sure if any of you will know the answer, but if you don't, we'll find out and we'll send it as part of our follow-up. The question is wondering if the number or percentage of Black police officers in Ferguson has increased since 2014.
Yes. Yeah,
significantly.
Yeah.
Significantly. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. But people assume that changed the material conditions of people on the ground, which of course it doesn't necessarily do, but the numbers, so the symbology, with my name Mobology, I guess my name Mobology, the symbology has changed, but the material conditions are not necessarily that much different from people, at least when I'm talking to them, and I'm sure Tori can speak to that as well.
I mean, it's the same. I mean, what's the dude? Harry Billingsley, notorious. He's still a lieutenant or a captain out there. I mean, he the person that you saw in MSNBC chasing children protesting hog time, dragging them down the street. He's still out there. He's the person that trains the officers. They have taken other officers from Normandy and Jennings and Paysdale and Pine Line, and even officers who were fired or about to be indicted in the city of St. Louis. And now they work out in, North County Cooperative or Ferguson. And that's kind of the back and forth kind of me and Sekou have, I can't claim that as a victory. I can't
Mhm.
claim that Darren Wilson is now replaced with a black Darren Wilson who would do me worse
Right.
in the name of diversity and inclusion. So yeah, they got black police chief, they got black lieutenants, they got black people over training, they got more black dispatchers, but you still don't want to drive through Ferguson because you still gonna get pulled over. They just got a slicker way to do it. They might not write you the ticket. It'll probably be North County Community Cooperative doing it through the auspicion of Ferguson, though.
And part of what Tori is pointing out is that the way in which that there was some state legislation around this is that when Michael Brown is killed, 1/4 of Ferguson city budget comes from ticketing. So it's about an institutional structure that there were 21,000 people in Ferguson and some 23,000 tickets issued in the city in 2013, meaning more tickets issued than people who are actually in the city. So part of that is that because you live in a Republican a supermajority state who does not have no love for the cities, they believe in starve the beast because under the language of physical conservatorship. So the cities are not getting state resources, which they should be getting allocated with. And then when you think you add that up with the racialized discourse, right? In terms of who are the people we need to go get this money from. It becomes clear that the black officers are under the same amount of pressure to do the ticketing in order essentially to pay for their salaries.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too, if I'm remembering correctly, that the legislation to curb that started out a lot stronger than it actually passed through, and it got consistently watered down in the back and forth and the, trying to satisfy both sides, whatever that means, but trying to, I guess, to work against party lines. And so that cap came down way, way, way lower than they wanted it to be originally, or way higher, I guess. Which actually, I think leads me to, I know for folks out there, I know that we're basically at time, but I do want to ask this phenomenal panel just one more question before we wrap up. And, that's really to this point of, this is actually what Empower does, right? Empower is an organization that works on systemic change through key policy issues. And so I'm hearing very consistently from all of you this message that like the symbolic victories are not enough, like we need real change. And I'm interested to hear from each of you in your mind, like what are those key policy changes that are critical to start to seeing some real change in this country, specifically within the criminal justice system?
I'll let Soda and lead. They usually get put out the playoffs first anyway, so I'll let you go.
Okay, because we have to go study.
Okay,
that's what we do it. So
if you play it good enough, you ain't even got it. You don't even know about a book if you do it right. So.
I think one of the things for me is that I would begin not with a policy, but with the people. Who is organizing masses of Black people? Like, what's the base building? Right? So, like, what we've consistently seen, particularly in St. Louis City, one of the things when we think about Cori Bush's victory, right, it's in part because you have a significant amount of Black working class people who have moved out of the city into the county, which helped get her over there, right? So that, like in terms of that there's an increasing level of poor working class political consciousness in the county, which is important, right? So how are we continuing to organize those bases and keep them in such a way that will allow us to move forward? And the same thing in northern St. Louis is who is doing the base building work, right? And that base building work, what is the quality of the political education? So is political education simply about whatever the next thing is, right? Is more is, you know, this is the claim no, tell no lies and claim no easy victory. So it's not just simply about the next campaign, but who's doing base building sustained work. When we look at the victories, say in Georgia, we look at the victories that we particularly say in Georgia and in Alabama when they defeated the cat, though who they elected wasn't much better, but is that you got 50 years of political education in Georgia, right? That can't be reproduced statewide in Missouri yet because our political infrastructure is not strong enough to be able to produce that high level. And part of that has to do with what is the level of broad-based base building. This is the 60th anniversary of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. How are we living in communities, building out bases and pushing people in such a way that they understand that they have a vested interest, right? One of the challenges for us is that we can't professionally organize our way out of this. We're gonna have to be in communities. That's the only way it works. This is the Cuban Revolution, right? Wherever there's been a great revolution, there's been a commitment by the masses of the people to protect the organizers. We don't have that level of political commitment yet, in which the people are willing to take risks, feed, right? SNCC, they're feeding them. They live in homes with them. So you can't, until you get that level of political organizing, that never in the history of, never in human history has the petty bourgeois led a revolution alone. They've always been in conversation with the masses of everyday people, and that the masses of everyday people create the possibility. That's what Ferguson does. It creates the possibility of possibilities, and which is the greatest victory, perhaps for me, since the Civil Rights Movement.
Thanks so much, Rev.
All right. I don't know how you got behind that. That's how
Something's always going behind. They always second.
It's okay. I don't know if you know this, but Sumner and Sodan have merged their football team.
No, don't tell me that's a lie from the pit of hell.
And we only lost one game all year. And we probably gonna almost sweep through the playoffs. I'm just
really.
Yeah, we good.
I mean, well, that's happened when you add intelligence to brute force.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know.
Exactly.
There's some sort of metaphor here about the power of the people coming together, right?
Exactly. We better not get cut off now, so I let Tori say what he needs to say.
No, it's good, and so organizing. We just understand, them 5 P's. Sekou talked about is the people. Those who are leading, organizing, putting ideas out, being the vanguards of it, right? Ferguson taught me that matters. If you don't have a Sekou, it don't work out for you. If you don't have a Alexis Templeton, it don't work out for you. And so those are the ways in which the people are at the center of it. Then we can get to the politics and the policy of it, right? So if the people are squared on how we build a policy that's from the ground up, then the policy looks like taking care of everybody at the protest. They'll know how to dismantle the pass around system in the St. Louis County Jail, where you could drive down the street and get the same ticket 10 times, get pulled over next time, and spend the next 2-3 months in 10 different jails, all for the same fee. And so after you go to that, as you're waiting for the policy, because I know the C4s and this, they do their thing, and that's the advocacy groups. But in the meantime, in between time, the people need a program to join onto. And so if you don't have a program to actually build up organic leadership and develop them, then you will have the managerial class. You'll have the petty bourgeoisie living amongst the people mostly, or around the people. But they'll have what we call pharmaceutical organizing, where they will come to you once a month and say, hey, look, we got a little free breakfast for you. We got a little free food, a little something once a month. The event is, and that's it. And if they get their funding pulled, then it's over. And so we got to have that program. All that leads to progress. And if we can get to the progress of the people, and you can tell it when the people that you are in intentional community with, right? And so, yes, I've organized with probably tens of thousands of people in the city and across the country and across the world. But unless we're an intentional community to say, what is Empower St. Louis doing? How can the International Black Freedom Alliance go advocate, right? How can we be in the same coalition to go against the mass incarceration? Or when Strickland and Ernest Johnson and all these people come up, and Reggie Clemens and LaRon Hornaday, how do we push collectively, right? So the people in the community knows that the program to educate the people is clear, that the policy is clear, that the politicians know that when we push, all of us can progress together collectively. When we can do that, I've seen it in other cities. I've seen it funded in other cities. I've seen it not funded and still be working at a grassroots coalition level. But when we can get to that level of community progress, then we'll know what it looks like to actually have a movement that's local with a national or statewide impact. And so those 5 P's are how we kind of organize and how we get there.
Right. Well, I'll make my answer really short. I would just say, humility for me is the key to progress. If you don't know, ask people who do. Get on the ground, be with the people, speak to the people who are directly impacted. What do you need? I think people forget, like they have all these ideas about what people need, but forget to talk to those people themselves. You can have all these top-down ideas, but if you build a little park here and they didn't need a park, what was the point in raising all that money, building the park and doing everything you did, right? I think that what we see now is a lot of top-down organizing where people are not with the people who are directly impacted and not talking to them on a daily basis. And I think spending time with Michael Brown Sr., spending time with Reverend Sekou, spending time with Tori and all the other folks in the film, I think has been humbling for me because I don't know. And I think as a documentary filmmaker, we ask those questions and we attempt to know and understand by connecting with people. And I think this is a policy and a practice that can be employed in all areas, right? You go there, you talk to the people, you sit down with them, you listen, and you try to give them what they need, not what you think they need. And I think that's ultimately, I think something maybe that people can take away from the practice of documentary filmmaking. We ask questions and we try to listen. And I think, I think if we just do that with a level of humility and a level of commitment to making sure that people's needs are met, I think we're moving forward in a way that we haven't been previously. I do want to wrap out by saying also, and I think you're probably going to say this, Mallory, but we're at the St. Louis International Film Festival on November 6th. So for those of you who have friends and family who you want to see the film in person, we are at the St. Louis International Film Festival on November 6th at 4:30 p.m. So you can go to the St. Louis International Film Festival website, get your tickets, support us, see you there. And then we're also on PBS on November 8th, Independent Lens at 10 p.m. Central, for those of you who are Central, and then 9 p.m. West Coast time on Independent Lens on PBS. And then we'll be on other platforms after that. But hopefully we'll see you November 6th, and since a lot of you all are local in Missouri and near the St. Louis area.
Wonderful. Well, Mobolaji, Tori, Rev, thank you all so much for taking the time to be with us here this evening. It was really great to chat with all of you. Just a few other announcements as we wrap up. As Mobolaji just mentioned, please do go and support the film and tell your friends about the St. Louis Film Festival. We'll make sure that information gets up on our website for everyone. I was going to say
one more thing, sorry. Vote
yeah.
too. I think we get to win awards if you go to the St. Louis Film Festival and you vote for us. I don't know what the award is yet, but I like to win stuff just in case. So vote if you can. All right.
And I would have imagined that if you want to see the continuation of the story, the more awards it wins, the more amazing support that exists for Mobolaji's work and other filmmakers like Mobolaji. So please do continue to elevate the narrative and the film. A few other really quick announcements. As I mentioned at the top, our partners at PBS would really, really, really like you to take the survey. So click the orange button at the top of your screen, tell them what you thought about this pre-screening event and about the film itself. Big orange button, you can't miss it. If you are a social worker and want to get continuing education credit for joining us tonight, please send an email to info@empowermissouri.org. That's the best way for us to link up with you and get that credit in your direction. And if you enjoyed our conversation this evening and want to do a deeper level of engagement in talking about community building, organizing, and advocacy work across the state of Missouri, please join us for our Anti-Poverty Advocate Summit, which will be online on November 4th and 5th. Registration is live, and we will be dropping the link in the chat for you to learn more. Beyond that, thanks again to our amazing panelists, and thank you all for being here with us tonight. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye.